A clap action or something. Yeah.
I'm Tori Milner, and I'm from the Iyengar Yoga Association of Greater New York here with Uday.
And I'm Susan Elena Esquivel from the Iyengar Yoga Center of Western Massachusetts.
I'm James Murphy from New York as well.
And we're so pleased to be here with Uday. And
thank you. I thought I was going to introduce.
Introduce yourself.
And I'm happy to be with all these wonderful practitioners over here.
Yes, yeah. So Uday, you agreed to come have a nice chat with us today. You're coming to the United States after your tour in South America, and we're so pleased that you're going to make a little pit stop with us. And so we'd love to let people know a little bit more about you and how you came to yoga. So can you say a little bit about how you came to yoga and what it was like learning at RIMYI as a beginner?
Okay, so first of all, I would like to say that I'm pleased to be amongst you over here, and I'm definitely looking forward to being there in person later on after the South America tour. Looking forward to being in Boston and New York. Thank you for inviting. To answer your question, how did I come to yoga? It was more of an it was unintentional in a way, where I was practicing martial arts, as I've mentioned before. I was a martial arts practitioner, student, and my teacher, Ali Dashti, was a student and teacher at the institute. So I was keen to practice Taekwondo, and then he saw my interest, and he was introducing us along with the Taekwondo punches and kicks, all those exercises we would do along with that. He would get us to practice asanas as well. And then he said, if you want to learn more, you need to go to this place. And that's how I got to know about the institute, actually. Initially, it was through him that I heard the name of Iyengar Yoga, Guruji, and then the place called as RIMYI exists in Pune. So, and many of my friends and other people around had never heard, and we were living near the institute. actually. It's barely more than a kilometer away. So I was always surprised to see that people were unaware. I mean, some people were unaware about this name and the place, and once I started going there, I realized what a fool I've been, as in not knowing about this place.
Yeah. And how did you make the transition from being a student there to the path of becoming a teacher?
Oh, okay. So, well, the transition happened, and it was not like I wanted to make it and I made it happen. I was just excited, delighted to be at that place, fascinated basically to see how the classes happen and how the teaching happened over there. And just wanted to learn more and be around, and I had wonderful friends over there who still are. So it was just practicing, going and learning from there. That was the intention. And eventually we were asked to be present in the children class. So assisting, being on the platform, demonstrating. Then gradually it turned into like being on the platform for Gitaji's classes. And so we were just like at that point of time, it was just a privilege, and being in front, showing, if there was a little bit of excitement and pride about it. Yes, I've been selected to go on the platform, but soon realized that it's not a yes, it's a privilege, but it's not something to be proud about, because whatever needs to be shown and corrected is all seen there. And that's where all the training actually happened. And then one fine day, just Guruji said that, okay, go and talk to Pandu and tell him that I've asked you to teach a class, which was a shock. I was like, what? Teach at the institute? I used to teach Taekwondo classes, and that was on. So I was not new to teaching and conducting a class. But teaching at institute was a big thing. I was like, "Are you sure?" Of course, I didn't say it aloud, but in my mind, I did. I did react with a shock, and just went and told Pandu sir, saying, "Guruji has given me this message, and I'm just passing it to you." In the back of my mind, hoping that you don't act on it. And it did happen. So like maybe when I passed on the message, perhaps he might have already scheduled and got the timetable ready for the next academic year. So nothing happened, and I was happy about it. A year, like a few months later, uh, everything was fine, went on, and once again Guruji called and said, "Hey, you didn't listen to me." And I was like, what is he talking about? I had already forgotten. I didn't know about what he was referring to. I said, what happened, Guruji? What happened? So I told you to go and talk to Pandu and tell him that you're teaching one class. And I was like, oh, you were serious and you still remember that as well. I was quite surprised. Surprised as in amazed with that fact. And then I thought, okay, so this is serious. There's no escaping this. It was not just a whim or he had said something like that. So I went and then spoke to Pandu sir. And that's how I started then teaching a beginner's class there.
Wonderful.
And that,
You'd once told me that also one thing Guruji asked you to do was to work with Raya and Abhijata and for you to practice together. And can you speak a little bit about what that was like for the three of you to work together and learn from each other?
So the reference came up as I think during the practice session. That's when he said that different body types you have to observe and learn. You have to see what comes easy to someone and just check how. So the topic came up where I think we were practicing balancing and arm balancing, and he just pointed out saying that look at him, he's muscular and he's just doing everything muscularly. So so you can, and that's when he said like you can study with each other, see how he's able to do something, but then he's lacking the way this has to be done. Look at my photo and look at what he's doing, and then look obviously the difference. So, so, so he said like just staying up on the arms and then like what needs to happen is something else. So just using the strength or brute force is not, that's not the way you should go about. So that's where the reference came, and he said that's when he said you have to study, you have to look at each other with your practice and observe how certain things are easier for someone, and if you're struggling with it, how the other person is able to do it. What is it? Can you read it? Can you see that? So basically, it was I think it was just to encourage us to observe and study, because in one of his interviews, I think he had mentioned right that when he started in his early days, he used to obviously practice, and when he was teaching, if he saw somebody do better, somebody practice or do an asana better than him, he would go and study, and why is that person doing it better than him, what is it that he's doing better, and then he would work on it.
Yeah.
So I think on those same lines, he was just asking us to study with each other like that.
So those experiences working with, so you had a woman's body, you had Raya, who's very tall, and then yourself.
Caring.
That was
I'm
one
short.
of the saying, trying to learn about different body types. You also learned a lot in the medical classes where you worked with Gita Ji there for many years, and then also the children's classes. So can you talk a little bit about how all that's come together to form your own teaching style? Because I find you have this unique way of integrating movement, like from the children's classes, but you also have a very strong sense of therapeutics that you also bring in, as well as a philosophy. So how did that all come together for you? It makes sense.
So I think again the credit goes to all the teachers at the institute there and the way the learning happened over there still continues to happen whenever we go. The point I think children class was that's where we first started, and being in front of children was exciting, great fun, and at the same time a proper I would say it was a good intense training for being in front of people, because with children they're brutally honest. If they like you, you can see that in your eyes. But for whatever reason, if you start being boring, you can clearly see that in that, and they'll just make it clear. They'll start expressing it, moving, and just it will be clear. And that is quite uh, being in front and seeing your audience do that. It's embarrassing, or it's not a pleasant sign, right? So it I think prepared in a way to face that kind of situation and to keep them engaged and involved all the while, and of course have fun with them, which was an exciting thing there. And with the therapy class, Gitaji used to always emphasize that therapy is nothing different than what you're doing in the general class. It's just that a particular condition, a particular case needs certain adjustments to be focused on. But it is not something like it's a different subject or a topic altogether. So whatever we practice and its therapeutic significance, it again is interesting to study the correlation there. And once she mentioned that, and time to time she would point that in the classes, like, see, this is what you do in the therapy class, and why are you not practicing it like this over here in the class? I'm asking you to do it and you're neglecting it. Then you come to the therapy class and then you need an assistant teacher to help you for that. So all those remarks started connecting those dots, and I feel that that started creating the interest and developing in a way. Means I would say that's how the curiosity developed, evolved to start linking why a particular instruction, if they're emphasizing on it, Guruji, Gitaji, Prashantji in the class, if they emphasize on a particular point, what could be its significance, or how can we correlate? So that I think that all makes it more interesting to study.
Yeah.
That's how I started studying, and I still continue to do that.
Yeah, and I see that in your sequencing in your classes. You'll start with a particular thing and do it over and over and over again. And then you go on to the next thing. And do you find that now that you're teaching all over the world and now leaving RIMYI, not teaching there and teaching more varieties of bodies and cultures, was that something that really supported you in reaching all the different people you reach around the world with the practice?
As in, means what I did at RIMYI or what I've done, like practice
I feel
over.
like now the way your classes are structured, you have you have like one action, like
Right.
with the hip or something, and then you really like spend a lot of time on that. Like sometimes I'll feel like for an hour in a 2-hour class. This one action, and then
Right.
you really say, okay, now you can go to the next step. Like you keep people from going to the next thing because you want to be very clear about the understanding, and it really pays off in the end, because then all of a sudden you're doing some other pose you didn't think you'd be doing because you spent all that time. So is that something that also came from what you were seeing teaching around the world, that was needed, that people needed more time with actions?
So correct. So that I would say over the years I have realized and brought in that change in my teaching, where what I felt was going through a sequence. Often, like we would go through the poses, the instructions were given and they were acted upon as well. But I realized that if we give enough time, and particularly happened with this as the online medium started, where we had suddenly instead of just once a week, we were meeting throughout the week. And those initial days, I realized if I'm meeting everyone, those who are attending, we're gathering every day. So I have time at my hand where I can just open up the asana, open up the preparatory part, and tomorrow we can have the continuation. And as a result of that, what happened was towards the end of the week, that Trikonasana, if we were practicing standing poses, that Trikonasana has a complete different experience. And I started getting emails with feedback saying that I've been practicing for 30 years now, and my Trikonasana has never felt like what we've done. So that was quite encouraging to receive that kind of feedback from senior practitioners. And I realized that we can continue with this kind of work where what's the rush of completing X number of asanas within a session? Fine, we can perhaps take this time to dive and explore a bit more on those basic movements, which of course these teachers have said time again and again, but we passingly means, I feel for them the limitation was the amount of time they had with their students. So they would emphasize, they would, with all that passion, that intensity, they would try to convey. And as students also, perhaps we would try and do it with our own intensity in that limited form. But then it just had to continue, it had to go further. So if we can break it down, take that time, and might as well just get one action, one adjustment. But if it starts to create a difference, if it starts to reflect in our practice, as that remark came up, I feel that can be a contribution. That can be something which can help us evolve our practice in some way. And I feel it. I've realized over a period, it's helpful for everyone. Means as a beginner can start building those basic building blocks in the practice. For a experienced practitioner, those dots connect much better. There is something else which starts to coordinate along with it, and it's not even something which I might have said or taught, but it brings or connects the picture in a different way. So I've realized it's quite encouraging to practice that way. It's not intimidating as well, like going one after the other, bam, 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 just trying to get you through all those asanas. We do that at times, as you must have seen, like the active classes are designed a bit more like that. But to generally go on, this, I think, I found this has been a bit more interesting, at least so far.
Yeah. So that's one of the sort of blessings that came out of the pandemic and working online, that you had to think different ways of reaching people. One of the things I think Iyengar Yoga is facing around the world is how do we bring people back and post-pandemic, and how do we create environments, and does our teaching have to change? Still staying true to the method, but how can you speak a little bit about how you see as you travel ways of people back into practicing together?
So I feel with this change, we have these two mediums available now, and we should take benefit of both of these mediums. Both have their own plus points, and it would be wise to avail both these mediums, because with online, we have the convenience of practicing from our place. We can connect and practice frequently, then making that effort to travel. But that doesn't mean that you should make that effort to travel, because what we can do in person is something that cannot happen online. So if you have to help someone, adjust someone, that physical touch, which is an important part of the practice, support, helping, giving confidence, that can happen much better in person. And that needs to happen. So, and that's the reason why. Otherwise, I would have said, no, I'm not coming there. Let's do it in this way. I have my studio. You can let students join. When the times were such, restrictions were there and it was quite troublesome, that works well, it's fine. It's a mode available, but in person still has its significance, and we should not try to pick sides over that, like this is better or that is better. Definitely the in-person work which can happen, and those what as often Guruji would say, like direct experience is something which is much stronger. So if you can make someone feel what is going upside down, if I'm scared, if I don't have that courage to go for jump for full arm balance or go into halasana, I feel scared of it. No matter how much courage, encouraging words you say from there, I'm not prepared. I'm scared. So, in some ways, that is a limitation there. And as teachers, of course, you shouldn't be. As in, I would not force if someone is scared. I would say, fine. I'm not there in presence to help, support, or control what is going to happen. So I can't force. So we can't take that risk. But in person, then we have, like I would have some assistants. If we have other teachers along, that gives we 2-3 teacher assistants can work, as you may have seen in the therapy classes. At times 3-4 people support, lift, pull, push to help a particular posture over there, right? So that is something which is unique for our style, our method, the way Guruji has taught, and it's something which we should not overlook, I feel. Definitely getting in person is important.
Yeah.
And that can be supported with regular practice like this. So what I have tried to do over here, and I'm gradually building upon it, is the regular classes I do it online, and those happen regularly daily. And then once every month, or currently it's once every month, I'm trying to increase it twice a month, and then have a in-person class where the local students at least can gather.
Oh, so for now, for most of you, it's online, except for those once a month or twice a month, maybe coming in person. Is that?
Yeah. So different other places I do go for the workshops, but for the regular students, then we decide the time, and then we, like those who can make an effort to come together at the London studio, then we meet there, and then we can continue further over there. And that's where then I won't go on with the simple basic turn the left leg out, right leg in kind of instructions. We can just take it further from there. We can try and work with each other. So that gives us more freedom to explore something further. So effort taken to get together and meet at a place, it can be much more rewarding by the way we actually work. So as teachers, I feel we can tweak that. We can change that a bit. Means what can happen in person, we start doing that, and other things can be, means we can have the balance of practicing online and in person.
Well, it's interesting because your experience of the pandemic and how you taught is really different than the way my experience was with talk, because I didn't have people regularly coming every day that I would teach, like you were speaking of. It was very different. So it had to be almost more general rather than more specific, or driving into something deeper and deeper every day, because you had them every day. I would see them not regularly. So it was a different experience. And I'm thinking about the students also. During the pandemic, we all were isolated in our own kind of worlds, and now people are coming back. And how do we handle people's what they went through? Because it's still, people are just still coming out of it, and that's a big deal with the fears of it and these isolation and all these kind of mental situations that went on as well.
Absolutely.
And how do we how are you handling it, or how would we start to look at some of those aspects as well?
I think that's one of the most important point, that the mental part, because mental health, just being in your own isolated space, that has a big impact. And I would like to say that I have experienced it. I mean, it just Yeah, I think all of us. It's great to have this connect and this kind of connection and availability to ability to connect like this. But the in person means I realized it as I started these in person workshops and classes. The the effect that it had on me after teaching that class was something different. The positivity, the exchange of energies. I think if we can say that while meeting people in person, laughing together or cracking some joke over there, it doesn't happen here. It means even if I crack joke, I have to just perhaps see the thumbs up or the response is quite limited there. But in person, it definitely changes, and I started noticing like what was missing, why I was perhaps getting cranky. My wife would tell you more. In person, definitely, that is one of the most, I would say, important aspects. That's why we cannot and we should not overlook this in person importance of in-person classes.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to say, and speaking of the importance of in-person classes, it's very exciting that the New York Institute is getting their old space back.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's kind of amazing after all this
I
time.
was delighted to hear that.
So we really appreciate you coming and supporting that endeavor, as well as the new center here in Western Massachusetts. Is we're both trying to create.
It's my pleasure. I would say thank you for inviting me to both the places.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
So some of my students, in their excitement of hearing you come, and of course they've heard me speak of you quite often, and they were wondering what's your favorite pose to practice? Because people see you jumping on social media and doing all this stuff. So they're wondering, what's your favorite pose to practice and what's your favorite pose to teach?
Oh, I've always struggled with the favorite question, as in you ask me what is my favorite food, favorite dish, or favorite color. I've always struggled to pick one. Mm, I don't know. Maybe you can tell what I've been perhaps going on and on regularly with the classes.
Hard because you cover a lot of stuff.
And I hope so. I hope it appears that way, and he's not going with just one favorite thing.
Yeah, no, I can't. I think you cover it all.
Oh my God, that's that's a nice
Although
that's a
you're
nice
sneaky
tagline. I
about
should have that.
Mandalasana. You're sneaky.
What? Sorry.
You're sneaky about Mandalasana. All of a sudden, before you know it, you have us doing Mandalasana. So,
Oh,
your
okay.
favorites. Anything
Well,
with,
it's I think where we did it once with the help of the wall was interesting there.
or maybe
Yeah, it's good
Nakrasana?
fun. Hmm?
Maybe Nakrasana.
Nakarasana. Yes, if we can. Those are,
You guys
the
should do that.
poses like that, like those are like those who can do it are happy and excited to like finally do it, and we should do that. But
Yeah.
then
You have to do that for everyone when you're here because he's so quiet. You can't even hear him touch the ground. It's kind of amazing.
you mean
When
the
you're across the room.
hopping Nakarasana. Okay, so I better keep myself light then by the time I get there.
So no ice cream.
No ice creams in South America. No,
Yeah.
no desserts there.
And then one of the last questions I had was, especially today's kind of an auspicious day. It's the 10th anniversary of Guruji's passing. And Bobby and Prashant had a beautiful, we got to see that live this morning. I don't know if you caught any of that. There were some beautiful sentiments there. But I was wondering if there was a teaching or a memory or something he said to you that comes to you often and continues to influence not only your practice and your teaching, but your life. If there's anything that, I know that's another one, like asking you your favorite pose, because I'm sure there's many things, but maybe there's just one thing that recently has come to you and a memory of him.
True, and to this question, I think I can come up with an answer because obviously he has, like, over the years, whatever he said through his books and his previous classes, there is so much to hear and learn from everything. But I remember he had mentioned once, not to me, but to Raya, and that has always actually, I have felt its significance. I have realized it works for me as well. He had mentioned one, I think those initial years, our younger college going days, where it was still not clear what to do, and yoga was not a profession in a way. Means at that point of time, it was not a reliable thing to, means it's a good thing to continue doing it, but what are you going to do for your livelihood? That would always be a question there. And I think Raya, as he was much more regular at the institute and practicing regularly, I think his family, his parents were having that concern that what is he going to do apart from this. And that's when Guruji had said that you stay truthful to your practice, do continue with your practice, and things will fall in place. And when he shared this with me, and I've seen over the years that it does happen, means continuing to practice, things do literally fall in place, things start to sort out. And whenever the practice, I'll be honest, like it's not that always that I have been meticulous and regular with my practice. And for whatever reason, if the practice starts to just fizzle out a little bit, it's not a good feel. It's not a good place to be in. And then suddenly I start seeing that things are not as they should be, or they feel they should feel. And as I get back to it, means of course without the practice it feels quite disturbed, distorted. And as I get back to the practice, it suddenly starts to get together and fall in place again. So I feel that quote, it resonates regularly. Means I kind of remind myself from time to time about it, and it has worked for me, at least in that way.
Wonderful.
When you moved to London or England, how long were you having regular classes, or did you have regular classes before the pandemic that then you went online? How much was that set up already?
The classes over here in UK.
Yeah.
So UK, I did have I was teaching in 3 places. I don't have a studio. I didn't have a studio of my own.
Okay.
So I used to teach at 3 different locations, which our Iyengar teachers used to run the place. And these were the regular classes I was doing. And then on weekends,
Workshops.
like not every weekend, but every now and then, once or twice a month, I would have, wherever the invite was, I would have a workshop, that kind of setup.
But how long was that before the pandemic? I can't remember how long you were living there or away from it.
So first, actually, even like the first time we stepped into UK was in 2010, and it was 19th August. So it's 14 years yesterday. And it was so 2011 to 12, I was here for a year and a half in between 2011 and 12. Then I was back in Pune for 3 years in 2015. So since 2015, I've been here, and then running those classes regularly before pandemic.
And then you were also teaching, like you did the French convention, and you were traveling around Europe, right, as well?
Yeah. So the first international convention was in 2015. Yes, that was the French one, which I taught first.
Uday, I have some questions for you.
Oh, sure.
I'm wondering, you're raised in the environment of learning yoga from from the masters at the
Yeah,
source,
blessed for that.
right? And then you're kind of thrown into this Western environment. And I just wonder if we could hear a little bit more about how you dealt with making that transition from being a learner and a student who then happens to start teaching at RIMYI to being a teacher of Western students, and just what a shock that must have been, or what a transition that must have been, because I think we're a real different flavor. I mean, I remember the first time I went to Pune, and just observing a class, probably because I didn't feel well, and just seeing the variety of what was there, people from the West and then the local people, and realizing, wow, it's just, there's so many things going on here, and yet everybody's taking it because it's coming from Iyengar, or it's coming from Iti, or it's coming from Prashant. And so then here we are out in the world, and we have that passion and we have that influence, and yet people aren't as keen as we find ourselves to be. So maybe can you just talk a little bit more about
So
there that you want to talk about?
yeah, means it has been an interesting journey, and as I look back on those initial years, I can now it's interesting to have that experience, because as you rightly said, at the institute, these masters were there. So whoever approached the institute, whoever came for the classes, they came prepared. They came with that reverence.
Sometimes they sometimes they prepared. But yes.
Yeah, there definitely were exceptions. Yeah, I agree. But generally the people were prepared, and people were coming with that reverence to the place and to these teachers. And growing up in that space and observing how things were and how people would queue, they still queue for those admissions on the day the admissions open up. And with that kind of setup where the space is a problem, like limitation of space, and that's how the admissions had to be stopped at a particular time. So having that kind of environment to practice and then to teach at that environment, in that place, so where we didn't have to bother about paying the rent for the place or advertising our classes, encouraging students to come. It was all available. So you have to just stand, you have to get prepared and be in front and teach. And when I came over here, so I first got a chance to teach at the Sarva studio, which was run by Sheila Haswell over here. And again, for that workshop, the practitioners who came along were again experienced Iyengar Yoga practitioners. So to some extent, it was a very relatable experience, because even though there are different places and different countries, there is still this uniform thing which we can experience. Means we can identify an Iyengar Yoga practitioner maybe from any part of the world. So that was not alien or different like that. But when I started when I was introduced by a local teacher, to take over a regular class, which was run by some other teacher with I don't know, some different school, the different background. But that teacher was migrating or moving to a different place, and wanted to hand over her students to another teacher. And it so happened that I was here and I was looking for classes. There it was an interesting experience. I've shared this before, because the very first class when I went to teach and we started, initially I was given a list of asanas, and they've been practicing with the teacher for 3-4 years, and with all that with the long list of asanas which they had done. I was a little nervous and anxious because I'm stepping into somebody else's shoe. And if you had a teacher for these many years, you obviously have that attachment with the teacher. And then someone coming and replacing that teacher is definitely not, from the student's perspective, you're not really that excited about it. So I was nervous about stepping into this person's place over there. But immediately I could see what was there. And I said, okay, I'm glad that there is so much more that I can do. It's not what I was anticipating. So part of me was instantly I felt that relief that, okay, I can do much more with these students. And then we started with standing poses. And back in the right corner, there was a lady standing as I was conducting Trikonasana. And I went and I asked her what happened. Maybe I was not clear. Maybe, of course, my English, which has a strong, whatever, Indian accent, not clear. I thought maybe I'll ask her. I said, anything wrong? Anything problem over there? Said, no, I'm fine. And I said, okay. And I was conducting the class, come up on the other side. She is still standing just upright and staying there. I was clueless what to do. I went again and I asked her, is there any problem? Is something hurting? Do you have any discomfort? No, I'm fine. And I asked them, why aren't you doing this? I don't like to bend sideways. I didn't know how to react to this. What? So
So what did you do?
Stunned. I was stunned. Means for literally 4-5 seconds, I didn't know what to do, and part of me was already like prepared to say, "What do you mean by I don't like to bend sideways? Then what do you want me to do? Put a massage table, blah blah blah." Like, but I just pulled myself away from that place and I went on instructing, repeat another attempt of Trikonasana. I was literally gathering myself there because this was a big shock.
Yeah.
How can a student say that I don't like to do this? And imagine, like, of course, you all have been to Pune Institute, you have seen these masters, and how weird and how absurd it would have been someone coming and saying, no, I don't like to do this.
Well, now you know what it's like for us every day.
Exactly. The other day I was telling someone, so after coming here, it has been an eye-opener of a different kind where I can see what are the hardships the teachers around over here have to undergo. It's not again, like being in Pune, I'm talking about myself. I used to see like every month there is a newer lot of teachers coming, some teachers coming regularly. So it's a regular affair over there. That new group of teachers keep coming. But what are the hardships and sacrifices behind that? I got to realize it. I'm not saying that nobody knew, but I'm sure they must be aware over there. But for me, it was an eye opener in that sense as well.
Did it change your perspective? I mean, did it change your approach to some degree or influence your?
Did you get this woman to go sideways ever? Did she ever bend sideways? That's what I want to know.
Yes.
Or did you leave her just going front and back?
Did you win her over, Uday?
And that exactly. So that was one of the most initial inspiring experience. So as that happened, I just pulled myself out and I thought, okay, I can obviously react and be rude to her and just.
You learned that. You learned how to do that. You got good.
Went out whatever my feelings were immediately because of what she said. And then I said, okay, that may happen because I'm in this situation, in this position as a teacher. I could perhaps say that. But what is going to happen? Maybe she will just walk out right away. Or even if she stays, I don't think she'll come back next week. I said, fine. If she doesn't want to bend sideways, I don't care. As in, for that class, I said, she doesn't exist. And if she's not ready to listen to me, of course, that ego stuff, it literally kind of jolted my ego there. So I said, okay. I went on with the class and I thought, okay, let's do this. So as this group was new to Iyengar Yoga, I started talking about instructions and getting them to feel what is happening. Okay, so do this, tuck the buttock like this and see what is happening to your back. Does it feel like this? Yes. Roll like this. Do you feel firm? Do you feel strong? Yes. All of those things. So started getting those answers from them. Next week, again, similarly, went on the similar set of asanas with those things, same instructions, similar work, asking them whether, do you feel the change from last week? Do you see it's coming better? And this, yes, yes. And those answers kept coming. I didn't bother her. She was again standing that second week also. She did come, which was good. And she continued to stand. I said, it's fine. As these answers kept coming, third week when we started, she went into Trikonasana. And that's where, in my mind, it gave a different satisfaction that I'm glad, because I could have been rude and that person would have gone out saying, yes, these Iyengar Yoga teachers are quite rude. And I had this one fellow which was so rude to me. But she came and she started doing it. Then I went, of course, and gave her a break and asked her that you can do it closer to the wall and this should be better, and just encouraged a little more. And I'm so happy, or rather proud to say that for that year and a half which I was teaching that class before I moved back to Pune, she was quite regular. And when we had the last class, a small get together, that's when she came forward. And she was not a talkative person at all. But during that last get together, she came forward and she said that I've been practicing for 15 years. And this last year and a half has been quite transformative for me. I've learned so much and I've practiced and benefited, experienced the changes. So thank you for that. And that was quite encouraging for me. I feel, so I literally said like, okay, pat yourself for this, or not turning away that person.
Because sometimes you affect people that seem like you're not affecting them at the most, the people that come right up to you, but then there's those people that are, you think, oh God, they're not getting anything from this, but then they're the ones that actually are most appreciative, and sometimes most, they're getting the most out of it. And it looks, but on the outside, it seems like they're just, they're not really there, but it's so important for them. And sometimes that doesn't always come across.
True. And so true. And that's what, so over the years, I think to answer Tori's question is, it has changed. I think it has made me a bit more understanding or compassionate about, like, everyone does come with their own background, their own whatever journey they've had so far. They've made an effort to come to your class. So I should respect that. Yes, if they are disruptive to others, of course, I take care of that. I don't, like, if you have to continue going on and on about something, let's talk separately. Let me just go conduct this class and let me just go through whatever we are doing. We can deal with it separately. So I don't let them overpower or overtake the whole class. But I think the change which I've experienced in myself is, anyways, I was not it doesn't come to me naturally to be rude or harsh. I might just shut out of the way I did with that lady. I just got myself away from her. But it has still, I think, gotten me a bit more understanding or compassionate, trying to find out, like, what is the thing? Why are you saying this? Why are you acting like this?
Right.
Let me know more about it. So that has been a change. I think it has changed me like that.
You talked about when you experience in yourself that your practice starts to fizzle out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What, and I think so many people over the pandemic have gotten more in, like, it's not uninterrupted anymore. It got interrupted. It's not long and uninterrupted. It's now, there's been an interruption, or there's been frequent interruptions. And so then, what do you say to people who are still struggling with that, or who still are struggling with even getting back to it? Or, you see how, oh gosh, I used to be able to do this, but I can't even do that anymore. And so then it's easy to get dejected or something. Like, how do you fix your mind? How do you fix your mind when you see that kind of slide in the mind, that.
So I think I can, I would like to separate these into two things. First is not being able to do something which you used to do. So we can address that separately. That is something, as Prashantji has always said, that in his classes, that what he's doing now, ask him to do it 20 years later, 30 years later. And so that has always been the teaching there. So if we notice something which goes missing like that, and that's where I think gradual change in the teaching also, where we can work on the building blocks. We may not get to the final pose or what seems like the final goal there. It's fine, but can we work on some intermediate step? Can we prepare and feel the benefit, feel the work, and notice the transition to that step at least? So that is how we've been working. The larger problem, or the thing which I noticed me struggling with during this pandemic and all, was it's not that there was some incidents or something which doesn't leave enough time to practice. Means all said and done, there can be circumstances in life where you will have to prioritize some other things with family or whatever work, and genuinely you would struggle to find that time. You may have, you may not have that hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever you're used to practice for. So those situations, fine, that all of us would have from time to time, but that is a different thing. There are times when you have the time, you can go on, and you still don't, you just can't do it. Even if you start doing something, like I've noticed with myself, I'm saying, I'll place the mat and then it still doesn't move. And then it starts creating that guilt.
Yeah.
But I'm having the time, I'm not practicing, or I'm just trying to do something which is trying to just fool myself in a way that, okay, I've been practicing. And you can genuinely start noticing it. And all that starts to create a lot of struggle within, an unnecessary negativity in a way. So you start beating yourself for not doing it, wasting the time, finding some distraction, suddenly just get into other mukha and you notice something on the floor. Let me just now vacuum the floor. Let me just arrange this thing. Any and every distraction, procrastinating in a way. And I just realized that this happens. So what I've tried and what has worked to some extent is, if this kind of feel comes up, doesn't help fighting it, because the more I'm forcing, it's still creating that much more struggle within. So in that case, fine, promise 10 minutes, go for 10 minutes. Thereafter, it's fine. If you continue. If not, 10 minutes, and that's fine. You need not just force yourself to be on the mat. And there have been times where after 10 minutes, I've just rolled the mat and kept it aside. And there have been times when those 10 minutes have converted into 3 hours, 3.5 hours. So, but that starts to happen. And at least if I just let myself go for those 10 minutes with regularity, it starts to change then. And that feel or that kind of struggle just goes away.
Yeah, I like that, because I remember my first teacher I studied with, he used to just say, a pose is a practice. Just practice one of the poses that we did, from class. And you don't need an hour and a half. You don't need all these things. You don't need special clothes. You don't,
Exactly.
it's so liberating as a beginner who didn't know anything about practicing. And so you know, in New York, when we have you come, we're going to have level 3 and up practitioners for the weekend. And so
Okay.
it will be people with experience, but I think a lot of the people who have experienced an interruption in their practice, or like some disruption. Like now they have the
Or-
neck thing and they're not, you know, doing Shirshasana, or now they have a hip thing.
Yeah.
You know, all these things happened in the pandemic. So that
Correct.
we're, even though we're experienced, we have you know,
Problems.
problems.
And I feel absolutely, and that's why, as I think Susan Elena would, you can agree or you can point out if that is not the case. I mean, that's what, like, as I started having these students who have been practicing more than my age, so, and when you get these students, they have learned from the masters themselves. They have learned for so many years. They have been working for so many years. And so, how and what to do with these students if they come to you? So that's where I've realized that it's not about just completing a sequence or just putting them through a sequence. Different phases of life, different stages of life with different conditions. We can just try to work around it and then finally learn to address what the asanas are finally supposed to do. And that's where those 10 minutes, are you able to just work on that disturbed mind or the distorted feeling which is there, that struggle, or that fight which is going on? You need not complicate it by placing a demand of, okay, I need an hour and a half practice and only then it identifies, or it it satisfies the criteria of doing a practice there. It's not needed. Means, yes, at times, as you said, a pose along with some focus on the breath, and if it allows you to feel you have calm down, or you have focus for the rest of the day, you feel better prepared. That is the purpose of the practice, isn't it? Practice doesn't mean we're just going on and on with certain things. So that was liberating in a way, to just get that pressure off ourselves, or my own self over there. And then it encouraged me to just go on exploring something further, go on trying out, practicing, exploring whatever I'm struggling with, how I can try and find those intermediate steps at least, and not just be frustrated about not being able to do it. Fine, it's not happening. It's not happening. I don't need to be frustrated about it.
I think,
How can we work?
yeah, and I think what I've really enjoyed observing in you and learning from you is that whole idea that as teachers and students, it's about this idea of communicating with ourselves, but also with our students. And I remember one day in one of the classes, it was a 2-hour class, and you gave us a 45-minute Shavasana, and everybody was like freaking out because you said, we did a few things, and then you're like, okay, get a bolster, get this and that, and, get ready for Shavasana. Everybody's like, Uday, they're unmuting Uday, but you confused. The class is still another hour or something. But you could see that that's what was needed, that it didn't make sense to go anywhere but there. And that was an amazing experience at that time in the middle of the pandemic, to do a 45-minute Shavasana. And so I think that now post-pandemic, and I think you've sort of carried some of that through.
Now it's a 2 hour Savasana we have to have.
I remember that the people literally were unmuting, said, hey, it's not a 1 hour class,
That's
it's 2 hours class, so we still have.
And you're like, I know. You knew exactly what you were doing. Everybody thought you were confused about the time. Yeah, but I think that's the sort of thing, isn't it? That what you're speaking to is being more aware as practitioners as well as teachers about what's appropriate, which is what always,
And I feel
words you were saying all the time, right? Why are you here? Why are you doing this?
Exactly. And I feel in some ways, if we take away that like pressure or that excess expectation, it liberates and it allows us to practice with much more freedom. Means I'm again speaking from my experience of my field, that if I'm forcing myself, that it's literally like those, that like, what is that, pedometer, or counting those steps. If you haven't completed your 10,000 or 15,000 steps, and then it's a disappointing feel always there. So yes, ideally, if possible, you should be walking, you should be doing all of those steps. You should be practicing for hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever you can. But if for some reason it's not happening, or it just falls short of that goal, it should not create that dejection or disappointing feel. Then I feel it's a it's a wrong approach, I think, in that case, because if it becomes almost like a necessity, then how different it is from an addiction, then, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's such an interesting study of the mind, of avoidance, and just procrastination, and what we're, and then like you were talking earlier about having compassion, and just being able to say, well, this is just where I'm at right now, or this is where that student's at right now. Like you're saying, I can't force someone. I had someone come in the other day, and she had these little black like footy socks on, and she just she really didn't want to take those socks off. And so I didn't say anything about her socks. I just started teaching all about the feet, and really focusing on the feet, and look at your feet and spread your toes, see the space between your toes. How wide can you make? Come down, bring your big toes together. And I mean, it went on and on. And I just kept thinking, when is she going to take off the socks? Because that was part of it. It was just trying to, and eventually, and then I just kept teaching. I stopped focusing on it, and I just kept teaching. And then I realized at some point, oh, she took the socks off. I don't know when, like, but instead of making it, like turning it into that ego, that
Yeah,
ego. I think you were speaking to that,
correct. Yeah. And I think that is a change I've noticed.
I guess it's like getting into a power struggle, whether that is that power
Correct.
struggle. Am I getting into it with a student for some reason, or am I getting into it with myself because I'm, disappointed in myself for some, and just giving that up, I think, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
It's just so refreshing.
I think, and that's how it should be, isn't it? Otherwise, you're right. Like the word, I like what word you used. It becomes a power struggle, and we always have that upper hand as teachers. We would always be able to express and say, but then doesn't help. Means in this case, whether it's socks, or the case of that lady who doesn't want to bend, we we can be powerful with our words, and we can say some things, but then what is that the reason behind it? The only thing with that lady is I never got to know why she had that reluctance to bend sideways, because when I asked, she said, no, I just didn't like it. So why the dislike came up, I'm not sure about it. But we, like, who knows, like, what are the reasons? Maybe some of them, like with the socks, I've noticed even here, at times when it's cold, I realize like how cold it is. It's the cold is of a
People have a
different
different thing
kind.
about their feet. They don't want their feet touching things, or they have some fungus or something. They don't want to give it to other people, or something. They don't want to catch it from other people. People have different things about feet. But I think it's important
Exactly.
that we're going to take them on a journey, and so we want them to be with us when you go on that journey. And so if you know it's going to be really great if you do this, and they're not doing it, it feels like, oh, come on, I want to take you somewhere, and they go, oh, I don't, I'm not going to go sideways. And so then it feels like, well, then how can I take you there? Because there's these steps to get there. I want to take you to this really great place. And so that's what kind of, I don't think it's not always a power struggle in that way. It's like, I know where we're going. I want you to come with me. And then they're going, no, I don't do that. I don't. So then they think,
Yeah.
oh, So then you're not going to be able to enjoy what I'm going to show you. And you don't want to miss that chocolate shop that we're going to stop at. So don't, and then we only get that chocolate shop if we do this other thing first. So that's what happens, you know. Anyway.
True. Mhm. But yeah, we can gradually just coax them to encourage them to. And I feel, yeah, all those like, well, what you can say, maybe they're unsure, or as you said, they have some condition which they're perhaps embarrassed about. They don't want to reveal it, and so it all keeps happening. So maybe we just give them some time to open up, or ask them with giving them confidence.
Dave, what is your biggest challenge with teaching online? Like, what do you find the biggest challenge with that is? I mean, I know not being in person, you can't make the adjustments and all those things. You have to explain something they can't understand. But is there anything else that you see as a challenge with that, or a problem, or
challenge? I think the only thing which I miss about is as the class ends, it just ends. As in it's as soon as I end the meeting, it's quiet. Which after in-person classes, there is some interaction. Like someone would come forward and say that, oh, this is the reason I was not doing this, or I experienced this, I experienced that. There is some exchange, and there's some feedback, which cannot happen in this online medium. And that's why I keep on asking people if there's anything, you can write to me. At least there is some mode or some means to communicate in that way. But personally, that is a bigger challenge, is what I feel, having that interaction afterwards, or even during the class. Even during the class, then people do write in the chat. At times they unmute and speak about something, so which is still fine. But at the end, then the class has to end. So that, what else? I think that is that is the first thing which comes to my mind. But otherwise, exactly, it's not being
basically you have the camera on. You have the camera on, and you teach there, and you come to the camera and teach. So you're not having to move the camera around. You're not having to do different things. It's just like there, and you've got that down, right?
Correct. And so that I feel is one of the benefits of this system, because no matter how many students we have, because if you have in a class, say 50 or 70 students, when you are showing something, you're perhaps trying to show a small movement adjustment with your shoulder. Where the students are standing, they'll have the perspective error, they'll have that distance where something is moving, but that precise movement is not visible. But here I can come close to the camera, and if I want to show the finger which way it has to move, palm, wrist, forearm, I can clearly show something here, which everyone is going to see the way I want them to see. So I feel that is one of the benefits of being able to show. And I think it has helped me with my practice as well, where I'm able to see what I'm showing. I'm able to demonstrate what particular action I'm talking about, but perhaps it's not happening with me. So I better work and get that action clear and then present it better. So this medium has helped me in that way, I would say, to be much more clearer and precise with what I want to say, what I want to show. And it has changed my practice in that way.
And I wondered, Uday, I know this is probably a little hard to answer, but James brought up a good point that I think happens a lot here in the US, in that you don't have consistent students. You know, like at the Institute, you sign up for a year. And when I used to study with Patricia in Boston, we had to sign up for the semester, right? And you were automatically enrolled for the next one, and it went on because you didn't want to lose your spot, right? And so nowadays here in the US, we have to have drop-in classes. And so you have different coming all the time. And what I find is really nice about your online classes as well is that it's a similar group of people. We've all kind of gotten to know each other. And then we also see each other in person because we go to like a retreat in Spain or whatever. And so there's it feels very different than it doesn't feel like a drop-in class. So can you speak a little bit to that whole, any advice for how we deal with, and how can we express to students, again, the importance of making a commitment to a class? and how the learning is different than if you drop in on occasion?
So that, and so this is something which I had experienced before the pandemic, and this was a regular case until 2019, before the pandemic made us shut the classes. So regularly means the classes which I had in person, and until 2019, there were times when I had to pay the rent out of pocket because the number of students were missing. And uh, I was smiling because I remembered a funny situation where I was perplexed, as in those initial years where I was teaching, and the studio I was teaching at was a small one. Maximum capacity was, I think, 12 you could fit in that place. And for a couple of weeks, then I had started getting 8, 9 students. So I thought that's a good number. Now it's approaching the capacity of the class. So it's a good number. And then the next week, there were just 2. And then as I was conducting the class, in my mind, I was worried. I was thinking, have I said something which was offending, or have I done something which people haven't? I do take shower before coming to the class. What is it? And I was teaching, and then I just couldn't resist it. But I just ended up asking then one of the students, like, well, what do you think? What happened? Why has everyone disappeared? And then the student said that, oh, it's a half term. What is that? It's school half term. So still, what is that? I didn't know. When the school has a half term break, the kids are at home. So parents have to, one of the parents at least has to take care of the kids. Oh, okay. So that is the situation. So the irregularity in the numbers. No, this is a genuine reason which I later on realized. Which
You can't take things so personally, Uday. You can't take things personally.
it did feel like that, though. I was literally questioning, what have I done or what have I said, and I was quite quite shocked for that moment. To be honest, there. Which is not the case in Pune, right? Pune, we don't have this half-term break, and those kind of breaks were not there. But then I feel means how to get the students to commit and to get back is, I think, over a period they start realizing it, and perhaps having this option, if it is possible, where we can have regular. Because I feel means I may not be able to. I'm not perhaps giving you the clear, precise answer. I'm just expressing my thoughts on this. With the way things have changed, I feel even if I want to come to your class regularly, physically, perhaps it's not possible because of so many more commitments which are there in online meetings or whatnot, distractions. I think there are much more demands on our time in that way. So commuting, making that effort to commute and get there can perhaps feel a bit more demanding. So it has to happen. I'm not again saying that this can be an excuse and this should be an excuse. But if I'm regularly practicing with you in some ways, or with an online mode, and then I know that, okay, I have practiced, I have worked in this way, and there is something more which I can be achieving due to this continuity or due to what is happening. I feel personally I would be then more interested, or I would be looking forward to get there, if that is a possibility there. But otherwise, again, like as students, I think would realize if this is not a possible mode and it's only in person that the classes are happening, obviously they will realize that if the break happens, it just disconnects, or it just becomes a much longer gap in between there. So somewhere maybe just keeping a track of that, being aware of that such gap is, it's not a good thing to have such gaps in between. We can continue with a regular practice, regular class, maybe more than once a week, if that is possibility, then more than once a week in different modes like this. Can we make use of both these modes, in person, online? So somewhere if that can help us continue with the help of both these modes, I feel it can help. It can help. It can help go on with the regularity. I don't know. As I said, I don't know if I've answered your question. I've just beaten around the bush a lot.
Yeah, it's a tough one, but I think, yeah, I think having people do some sort of blend of online and in person is better than missing, basically.
Exactly. I think so. Somewhere I feel as teachers we have to adapt to this change, and because I've been, and I'm not saying you're doing that. Obviously, you're far more well versed with this medium, but I've been to some countries around here after the pandemic, and I've seen a group means it just falls into two groups. One group is for the online mode if it has worked for them. The other group is completely against it and saying that, oh, this is not the pure way, this is not how it should be done, this is never this would
You haven't heard the third group, which is a hybrid.
hybrid. Yeah.
You do both at once. Do you do that?
I've done that some places wherever the setup is available. I feel again the hybrid, again my thoughts, my view about the hybrid system is, so if let's say I'm coming to a place where it's going to happen in a hybrid mode, so my priority would be focusing on the people who are around there, and obviously those who are online with, I'll time to time I will go and check with the screen, but I will ask them to, if there is any doubt, means you can't expect the same amount of focus as I'm having.
That's right.
For the in-person people, they have made an effort, so I have to genuinely justify, or like I have to acknowledge their effort to come in person, so I will be focusing on that. I'm not saying you've been lazy. Maybe there are some genuine reasons, or perhaps you haven't been able to travel for whatever condition, but this is a uh, this is a facility that this system has provided now. So let's make use of it. If there's any doubt, if there's any question, of course, speak out and we can discuss and we can do that. But you can't expect me to constantly keep looking at you. And that is how I've balanced the hybrid mode so far. So I've taught that hybrid system. And in some ways, like to just genuinely speak about what do you mean? What I mean to say is the financials of running an institute in a place. If some students, like if there are a limited number can come in person, and there is a decent number of students who can join online, so it works well to run the place as well. Because so as teacher, I feel there is a small adjustment we have to do. We have to, yes, time to time focus. We have to have the setup ready. So as a teacher, we have to adapt to that. But that adaptation, I think, is going to serve the students as well as to run the place better. I think it does work. I did mention that to one of the studios over here who were like strictly against it, saying, no, now that things have opened, we want to go completely in person only, the way it was. I said it will be not wise because the studios are struggling to, like, financially. It's a, as I'm sure you all know that so much better than me. I said this is a mode. If it's available, why not? We should go for it.
Yeah, great. All right. Any other?
I think I don't want to take any more of his time because I want to have him rest so when he comes here, he has all his energy.
That's right.
No, I'm happy to talk to you all. It's so nice to see you after a long time.
Yeah, we're so looking forward to having you here today. It's really wonderful.
Me too. Looking forward to being there.
Any other questions, you guys? Yeah.
I really appreciate
Yeah.
sharing this time and space with us today. And we're so thrilled that you're going to
My pleasure.
be coming to New York at a time when we're moving into a former space, and yet it's a grand reopening, and it's
I was so happy to hear that the other day when James connected. Yeah.
So you're going to help us get back to the future.
Yeah. And you're helping us
Let's see, yeah.
start here as well.
She's
So-
got this beautiful place there. I mean, it's just so beautiful. I've only seen it on virtual. You know, I haven't seen it. I've seen it hybrid. I haven't seen it in person, but it's
Hopefully you'll be up here sometime too. Great. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Uday.